there lived a husband and wife. For a long time they already wanted to have a child, but he was not there.
Oh.
One day, my wife fell ill. The husband asked her what she wants the most. The wife replied that there was a magnificent garden nearby, where many of the most beautiful flowers grow. There is a beautiful Rapunzel in the garden. It looked so fresh and so green that she really wanted to taste it. But the garden was surrounded by a high fence, and no one dared to enter it, since this garden belonged to one witch. She possessed great power, and everyone in the world feared her. The husband loved his wife very much, and decided to get a Rapunzel for her, no matter what it cost him. And so at dusk he climbed over the stone fence into the sorceress's garden, in a hurry picked up a whole handful of green Rapunzel, and brought it to his wife. She immediately made herself a salad from it, and ate greedily. She liked this salad so much that the next day she wanted even more than before. The husband made his way into the garden again, but the witch was already standing in front of him. She glared at him angrily and said that he would pay a lot for stealing the Rapunzel. He asked the witch not to be angry, because he tore off the Rapunzel for his wife, who was very ill. And he loves her so much.
Okay.
The witch's anger passed a little, and she said that if it was true, she would allow him to collect as much Rapunzel as he wanted, but on one condition. He will have to give the witch the child who will be born to his wife. The husband agreed with fear. When the wife gave birth to a daughter, the witch immediately appeared, took the child with her, and named her Rapunzel. Rapunzel became the most beautiful girl in the world. When she was 12 years old, the witch locked her in a tower. That tower was in the forest, and it had no doors or stairs. Only at the very top was a small window. When the witch wanted to climb the tower, she called Rapunzel to pull her sides down. And Rapunzel had long, beautiful hair. She hears the voice of the witch, loosens her braids, ties them up to the window hook, and the hair falls down, and the witch then climbs up, clinging to them.
Hello.
Several years passed, and the king's son happened to ride a horse through the forest where the tower stood. Suddenly he heard singing, and it was so pleasant that he stopped and began to listen. Rapunzel sang it in her wonderful voice. The prince wanted to climb up. He began to look for the entrance to the tower, but it was impossible to find him. He once saw how the witch climbs up the braids that Rapunzel lowered her. And the next day, when it was already getting dark, the prince drove up to the tower and called Rapunzel. She heard, pulled her braids down, and the prince climbed up. Rapunzel, seeing that a man she had never seen came to her, was very frightened at first. But the prince spoke to her affectionately and said that his heart was so touched by the singing that he decided to see her without fail. Then Rapunzel ceased to be afraid, and when he asked if she agreed to marry him, she gave her consent and held out her hand to him. But they just did not know how to go down together. They figured out that when the prince came, he would always take a piece of silk with him, and Rapunzel would weave a ladder out of it. And when the ladder is ready, they will go down it together and leave. The sorceress did not notice anything until one day Rapunzel asked why it is easier to drag the prince up. The sorceress understood everything, got angry and clutched in rage at Rapunzel's beautiful hair. I wrapped them around my left arm several times, and with my right grabbed the scissors and cut them off. She took the sorceress into the dense thicket of Rapunzel and hid her there. She tied the severed braids to the window hook, and when the prince appeared, she pulled them down. The prince climbed up and saw the witch. She looked at him with her malicious look and said that he would never see Rapunzel. The king's son was beside himself with grief and jumped out of the tower in despair, but the thorny thorns of the bushes, on which he fell, gouged out his eyes. The blind prince wandered for several years in grief and sorrow through the forest, all the time grieving and crying for his beloved lost. Once he went into a dense thicket. Suddenly the prince heard someone singing. It seemed so familiar to him, and he went to meet him. When he came closer, Rapunzel recognized him, threw herself on his neck and cried bitterly with joy. 2 tears fell in his eyes, and the prince regained his sight and began to see as before. He brought her to his kingdom, and they lived for many, many years in happiness and joy.
In the deepest part of the sea stood the palace of the Sea King. And he had 6 daughters. They played in the garden all day long. Unlike the other princesses, the youngest was quiet and brooding, and her name was the Little Mermaid. Most of all, she loved listening to stories about the world of people. Traditionally, a mermaid could only rise to the surface for the first time in her 16th birthday. And now it's time to see the land and the youngest princess. She surfaced close to the ship, singing and music coming from the deck. This was the first time the princess saw the ship. In the cabin of the ship, the Little Mermaid noticed a handsome prince. For a long time she could not take her eyes off him. Suddenly, a violent storm began at sea. The prince's ship hit a rock and shattered into pieces. In complete darkness, lightning flashed, and the Little Mermaid saw the prince fall into the sea. She rescued him by bringing him ashore. Soon the prince was found by a girl passing by. When he woke up, he smiled at her and thanked her for saving her. The Little Mermaid became sad that the prince did not even know about her existence. She dived into the water and swam away. From her father's stories about people, the Little Mermaid knew that they considered the fishtail of mermaids to be ugly. Therefore, in order to please a person, one had to acquire 2 legs. The next day, the Little Mermaid went to the sea witch. The sorceress agreed to make a potion for her that would turn the fishtail into a pair of slender legs. The princess's gait would be graceful, but every step she took would bring unbearable pain. And if the prince married another, the Little Mermaid would turn into sea foam. In return, the witch wished to take her wonderful voice from the girl. The princess was ready for anything to be close to the prince, and she agreed. Having sailed to the prince's palace at night, the Little Mermaid drank a magic drink. A sharp pain shot through her and she passed out. Waking up in the afternoon, the girl saw the prince in front of her, and lowering her eyes, found 2 legs instead of a fishtail. The prince tried to find out who she was and how she got here, but the Little Mermaid could not speak. Despite her airy gait and beautiful dancing, she felt terrible pain in her legs. The prince became more and more attached to the Little Mermaid, but still treated her like a cute little child. It never entered his head to make her his wife. Once the prince admitted that his heart is occupied by the one who saved him long ago on the shore, and they are going to get married. The Little Mermaid was very upset, but could not tell him the truth. When it was time for the wedding, the prince invited the Little Mermaid to go with the newlyweds on a honeymoon trip. A luxurious honeymoon tent is spread out on the deck of the ship. The Little Mermaid had one last evening left to be with the one for whom she left her home, gave her wonderful voice and endured endless torment every day. But he didn't even notice them. When silence fell on the ship, the Little Mermaid sat on the deck and waited for the first rays of the sun. Suddenly, near the ship, she noticed her sisters. They tearfully asked the witch to help save the princess from death. The sorceress gave them a sharp knife, with which the Little Mermaid was to pierce the heart of the prince. A drop of his blood would turn her legs into a tail, and she could return to the sea. The Little Mermaid looked into the tent, and saw there a sleeping couple in love. She did not find the strength to take the prince's life, and threw the dagger into the sea. With grief, the Little Mermaid threw herself into the water. But the kindness of the princess melted the heart of the wicked witch. The sorceress cancelled her spell, and the Little Mermaid again had a fish tail instead of human legs.